Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Ben 10 Retrospectives, and today we're going to be discussing episode 37 of the original Ben 10 series, The Return. And this episode opens with the alien werewolf from the Ben Wolf episode running into the ice cream factory from the Under Wraps episode, and after alerting the security guard who was mutated before, and I'm not kidding, it's the same guy, he runs into a back room and then digs up the mummy from that episode. At which point, in a flash of purple lightning, they disappeared. And that's the opening. That's the first little opening before the main theme. So this is the episode that begins everything. So what I mean by that is that this is the episode that starts off the quote-unquote finale for the season. It's not really the quote-unquote finale because there's still one more episode after the story, and I'm not talking about the episode after this because, bit of a spoiler, this is a two-parter episode, and I'm only going to be talking about one episode because that's how this works, and that's going to be what happens for Ben 10, and I think I might be doing Alien Force, so for even the 1 hour specials like that, I'm just going to be doing it one part at a time, so that's probably, so yeah, I'm not going to be talking about the second, I'm not going to be talking about the second part, so I'm not going to go into all my full thoughts for this vlog, because I want to talk about both episodes as a whole, because they're both essentially they're both essentially the same story. But I will be talking about some things, and of course I'm going to spoil the story rotten, because that's what I always do, whether intentional or not. And there are some things that I actually would like to discuss, so anyway. After that opening, we cut to the Tennysons stopping a prison bus from escaping. And in this case, and of course, after they stop Ben's gotten a bit more arrogant since the last episode. In this case, he's regarding Gwen and Max as the help. Like, he's pretty much just saying that, I'm the one that does all the work, you two just do cleanup, or just on standby, and okay, maybe in some cases they do that, but Ben's just being more arrogant. But in the midst of this, Max tells his grandchildren to be quiet because he's watching the news. As it turns out, at Cape Canaveral, there are flashes of purple lightning going around that's grounded a recent launch, and the Tennysons decide to investigate because they've encountered purple lightning before with the werewolf and the mummy, so they go to Cape Canaveral, which they can get into easily because Max has an in, because he was once an astronaut for Cape Canaveral and was going to do Apollo 11, except he backed out to join the plumbers, which is silly, but but that's a different type of silly altogether. But at Cape Canaveral, there's apparently a new guy called Dr. Victor, who no one knows who hired him. He's a brilliant man. He's making adjustments to the shuttle at the moment, so something is going on. No one knows what. Pretty much, and he's just not a nice person. And the Tennysons end up running into him. He tells them he pretty much tells them to piss off. They don't belong here. But the Tennysons decide to continue investigating even without the launch director letting them go on, because Max is friends with the launch director. That's the connection Max has. So they sneak into a control room. Max tries to look up security footage, but Ben gets bored, so he goes wandering off and goes into a flight simulator. I think it's that thing that spins fast. I'm sorry, I forgot what the word is. I know what it is. Velocity tester? I don't know. Someone please tell me. I really have no idea. Actually, no, I'll just look it up later, never mind. Anyway, when he gets into this room, he's ambushed by the werewolf because Dr. Victor was confronted by the flight director about his credentials, and instead of giving them to him, the mummy wrapped him up, and so Dr. Victor told the werewolf to go and get rid of Ben because he saw the Omnitrix, and somehow he knows that Ben is a threat. So the werewolf attacks Ben, and then Ben goes alien, and this is the episode where we finally get to see the mummy alien, and aka Ben Mummy, aka Snarrow, but that's an Omniverse, so this is the original Ben 10 series, so he's Ben Mummy right now. So anyway, we see Ben Mummy for the first time, so he and the werewolf duke it out while Gwen and Max look at the security footage, and it turns out the moment the lightning struck Cape Canaveral, Dr. Victor was there, and they find that that's way too much of a coincidence. However, they realize Ben's missing, so they go look for him, and meanwhile, Ben is just fighting off the mummy, and eventually the fight winds up causing a hole in the wall, which causes Ben to go after it. but where he runs into Max and Gwen, and after the Omnitrix time out, they both explain what's going on. That they both explain about their own little discoveries. So they decide to go up and try and find the mummy. They go into a graveyard, and not only do they find the mummy, but they find the werewolf. They do find the mummy, the werewolf, and it's the werewolf and the mummy working together. They both attack them. Ben is able to fight them off. It looks like he's winning when suddenly he's hit by a purple blast of lightning, and it turns out the source was Dr. Victor, who proceeds to transform into an alien Frankenstein monster with one bug eye, two bolts out of his back sockets, stitched on arms with electric gloves and boots. And yes, I understand the pun, Victor Frankenstein. I get it. That's all I'm talking about. Is move on. So at this point, it looks like they're screwed. The Omnitrix, they don't know what to do. And Gwen, and this is something I forgot to mention. This is something I forgot to mention, as it technically was also in the Under Wraps episode. Gwen, it turns out, has been studying the spellbook that she got from Charmcaster in the episode A Change of Face episode. Yes, I almost forgot the name there. She's been studying spells, and she was able to use a water spell from keeping the prisoners on the bus away, because they were on a bridge over water. The prisoners almost swam their way, but she used the water spell to keep them from going anywhere. So they have them cornered. Gwen tries to use a spell and fails, and this is ironically a spell that she will be practicing later. But at that point, then when Victor blasts them, she somehow creates a metal dragon that even she's surprised about, but it only deflects the lightning, so a pillar falls on them. Ben is able to protect them, but the Omnitrix times out, and by the time Victor and the mummy and the monsters are gone, so Max tells Ben that they need to split up. Max and Gwen decide to go stop the shuttle because Victor is concerned with getting that off, so they go and try and stop it. Ben goes after Victor. He follows them to an abandoned shuttle where apparently Victor has actually set up like a little underground lab, and the only people there at the moment are Victor and the werewolf. And so Dr. Victor is messing with this technology, and using these spare parts. Using these spare parts, he opens up a gateway for the werewolf, and it turns out the gateway leads right to the desert from the Ben Wolf episode, and it turns right to where all the satellite equipment is. Which, as I said in that vlog, has now been organized into some kind of console or whatever. So of course, Ben decides to go alien again. The Omnitrix is recharged. Ben goes alien to fight Dr. Victor. He's able to fend himself off, but Victor is able to get him aside long enough for him to get up on side of a platform. And it turns out that Ben is too late. He's activated. Victor has remotely set up the shuttle for this with a remote, and at the same time, Gwen and Max are on the shuttle because they tried going back into the control room and stopping it, but every override has been locked out. So they need to do this. So then you decide to get on a pair of hazmat suits because it's the mummy, and the mummy has that corrodium in its chest. So they go on the shuttle, but they're on it when it blasts off. But unbeknownst to them, so is the mummy. So they're gonna have to deal with that. But at the same time, Ben just starts yelling at Victor, saying, "Whatever you're doing, whatever your plan is, whatever it is, you're not gonna win." But to which Victor says, "It's not my plan. It's been the Master's." And so the camera pans up, and we see a section of wall, which is a section of a building that Ben knows, and even he realizes this as Victor points out that this is the place where Ben thought he destroyed his master. And then Victor says he was wrong as he courses electricity through it, and suddenly these weird goop starts coming out through the brickwork, starts coalescing, and suddenly we see that the mastermind behind everything, behind with the werewolf, the mummy, and even this episode, was Ghost Freak the whole time. It turns out that everything that's been going on has been Ghost Freak, and that the mummy, the werewolf, and Victor are all Ghost Freak's servants, and admittedly, you kind of wonder how. It's explained in a pop-up thing that apparently Ghost Freak planned this before he got out of the Omnitrix. That at one point off screen, Ben decided to go Ghost Freak to sneak into a horror movie, and at that point, Ghost Freak, or Ghost Freak's original persona, Ziskar, I think his name is, I don't know. I'm still gonna keep calling him Ghost Freak, because that's the name they have here, and I know we learned that in a pop-up ad, but I don't care. They don't call him that in show until Omniverse. There are a lot of things in Omniverse I'm not going to reference until they're acknowledged, but either way. So apparently at that point, Ghost Freak, while it took control of Ben and made contact with these 3 aliens to come here to organize this plan. So, okay, fine. I would have liked if they explained it in the episode, but really, I think it's just awesome to see Ghost Freak. But the instant he's brought back, the Omnitrix times out. Ghost Freak is ready to go after Ben because Ben has the Omnitrix. Ghost Freak wants Ben, and then cut to be continued. That's where the episode ends. And yes, I know I've just spoiled it within the first 10 minutes of this thing, but really, it is just a lot. So, sorry, dog just jumped on my bed. So, okay, I'm not going to talk. I don't think I can go full into my own personal thoughts on this episode because it's a part 1. That this is a 2-parter, so it's going to be kind of hard to talk about it. But there are still some things I want to talk about, and I will go into more. And I will bring up some things that I might be bringing up in next week's vlog, but either way, I'm going to talk about this episode. First, let me talk about what I like. First and foremost, I want to talk about Ben Mummy, because I alluded to him in the Under Wraps vlog, but we never saw him, so I said I didn't want to talk about him. Well, now we've seen him, I'm going to talk about him. My thoughts on Ben Mummy are, I think he's alright. I think he's cool. But like, I like the design of it. It still incorporates the same design. It's like the Ben Wolf design. It incorporates enough of the original source genetic material so that it still looks interesting, but it still has more of a flair. Like, everything that was purple in the Mummy is now green, and like in the Mummy, he has purple eyes. Ben, of course, has green eyes, but in the Mummy, there were some parts of its arms and bandages that were glowing purple. And for Ben, not only are those things now glowing green, now he has little black wrists. He has little black straps here because of Ben's clothing choice, which I think is a nice little change. I like that. Ironically, I think the problem with Ben Mummy is the same problem with Ben Wolf, in that he's not used very often. I think at all. Like with Ben Wolf, we don't really see that much of him. In fact, even in this episode, Ben isn't really that used to him because this is the first time he's ever transformed into him. He doesn't know how to do all the cool stuff with the Mummy. He doesn't know how to break himself apart. All he can do is just stretch his arm out, stretch his bandages, which admittedly he does okay with, but it's obvious he's not experienced with the aliens, so he's not getting as creative as he's usually allowed to be. And again, my big problem with him is that, like Ben Wolf, he doesn't appear that often in the show, if at all. I think he appears only one other time in the entire in the entire classic Ben 10 series, and he's not even okay. Technically, he's used by Ben, but it's not the right. But it's even then, it's not even for that long. So yeah. Again, I don't hate Ben Mummy. I think he's cool because I like the Mummy. I think the Mummy's kind of my favorite out of the 3 monsters, but I just kind of wish he appeared more. That's really, but again, that's a bit of a nitpick. So again, I criticized how the Ghost Freak getting all this together with my talking about the pop-up ad, which I think would have been better if they did kind of explain that in an episode, like how was he able to organize all this, because as they showed with Dr. Victor in that section from the academy, well, I forgot what the academy was called. I really forgot what the school was called that Gwen wanted to attend. I don't know, but it's obviously from the clock tower of that school. But for some reason, they don't go into full detail about how Ghost Freak was able to plan this, because he's been dead. Like, ever since Ghost Freaked out, they do state that he's been dead. Because they got the section of the school and they reassemble him from that. So again, they don't really explain. It's not really explained that well how he was able to make it this plan, which they don't go into. Which is another thing. Since this is part 1, they don't answer all the questions, because in my vlogs, like I mentioned in my Ben Wolf and Under Wraps vlogs, that they don't go into full detail why the werewolf and the mummy were after the things they were after. Why was the werewolf stealing all his equipment? We don't know. It's never answered. We see it was building something, but we don't know what the purpose was. We don't know why the mummy was so hell-bent on getting all this corrodium, but then it's never explained why. It's beaten. before we can see it. It just seems to be mutating people. But why is it so hellbent? But why does it want to mutate people? Why is it so hellbent? And it's not even answered here because we don't see why Dr. Victor wants the shuttle to go off. We don't see why, but we see that it is somehow connected with these other three as he sent the werewolf back to the desert so they get back to the satellite equipment while the mummy is now on the shuttle with the corrodium. So some things are obvious. So obviously they wanted them for reasons. We just don't know what those reasons are. And they're not, and they're explained, thankfully, but that's gonna be next episode. And again, I'm not gonna go too much into thought. Really, there's not that much to talk about. Well, okay. Actually, two things that I want to at least bring up. One, Dr. Victor. For one thing, he does have the continuing trend of incorporating the traditional monster sense into this. Because I like his look as a Frankenstein. I like the bug eye he has, which really does make him look, which actually makes it look weird. I like the stitchings and I like the stitchings and I like the giant generators, but I'm sorry, I think my favorite out of all three is still the Mummy. Like, I love the way it looks, and because really, I think he looks cool. I think he's creative in his own regard with incorporating the themes that make up make up Frankenstein with the stitchings, even the hair and the eye and the electricity. I think it all still helps incorporate the themes of the monster with its traditional sense. I just think it could have been a little bit more creative. But again, that's my own personal nitpick. I don't think he looks bad. He's still creative enough. So so I can still look forward to that. But so that's still something I like. And another thing that I like about this episode, is that we actually get to see more of Gwen practicing, because ever since the change of face episode, we have not really seen that much of Gwen using the spell book or any spells for that matter. The closest example that I can think of is in the Under Wraps episode, which I admittedly forgot to mention in that vlog. Because in that episode, as she was being chased by the mummy, she was wearing the hazmat suit. She decided to use a spell, but apparently magic and the hazmat suit don't mix, as suddenly the hazmat suit expands turns to a giant ball. Hold on. Sorry, get knocked down. But sorry. So that's kind of the closest we got to her practicing magic. But otherwise, ever since that episode, we haven't really seen much of it. And this is the first episode we actually see her starting to seeing her practice and actually study the spell book. And so, which I think is nice. I like that. I do. I just wish that they could have done more of that, other than this. So, again, I can't really go into too much. I can't go into too much of this. Okay, again, because I want to discuss the entire thing as a whole. Which, admittedly, maybe I should have watched Be Afraid of the Dark, but this is my system. I'm gonna stick to it, and if you don't like it, I'm sorry, because it's a flawed system. I will admit, but it's mine. Probably not a good attitude, but whatever. But again, I think as a two-parter, I think it does set up enough thing. I think as the first part of a two-parter, I think it does establish enough to make you want to come back. Because especially with the ending, with seeing Ghost Freak, to learn that that Ghost Freak was the big bad behind this. In fact, that was the reason I originally watched this episode. When I was a kid, I saw the ad for this episode on TV, and I was just like, holy crap. And the first ad I ever saw for this episode was Ghost Freak. The ending of this episode was spoiled for me even before I watched it. I saw Ghost Freak, and I just thought to myself, oh my god, Ghost Freak's coming back. I want to see this. I have to see this. And so I was just sitting throughout the episode thinking, where's Ghost Freak? Where's Ghost Freak? Where's Ghost Freak? Where's Ghost Freak? Oh, there's Ghost Freak. It's to be continued. Crap. Because that was my attitude as a kid. That was my attitude. I wanted to see Ghost Freak again, because I loved Ghost Freak. Even as a kid, I thought he was my favorite. He was one of my favorites, and I wanted to see him again. Sorry. Dog's wandering around on my bed. Then that's really nice, and I like seeing that it helps establish that there is in fact a connection, a bigger connection. There's a bigger connection that we still don't know, but it does make you want to know more about what's going on. Because it does actually end on suspenseful moments. It leaves enough questions unanswered. Again, I really can't talk about much more, even though I talked a lot more than I usually do. What can I say? Another Fangasm episode, I suppose. I'll probably even go crazier at the next part in the next episode because Ghost Freak. I just love Ghost Freak. So yeah. As the first part, I think it does its job well enough. It still has enough things, and it answers. It keeps enough things in mystery so that you'll want to come back, and it has enough suspense that you really want to come back. So, god damn it, dog. Fine, you get to end this with me. Sorry. So, yeah. I think that's pretty much all I can. I think he's marked this as the end. So, yeah. I'm Samuel Johnson. I'm sorry I didn't get into much more detail, but I will be going into a lot more detail next week because there is still one more complaint that I want to talk about with this episode, and I think I'll get into it more because that problem persists even in the second part. So, yeah. Thank you for watching. If you did it all, so I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll see you next week for part 2 of these episodes as we watch the return of Ghost Freak. So, yeah. Bye.